So I'm going to click on a button now, and you'll see a little recording symbol there. And why don't we go ahead and get going? This is the Carbon Leadership Forum Embodied Carbon NGO and Government Roundtable on embodied carbon. So if you're here for some other reason, like reviewing the price of solar panels or something like that, then you might be in the wrong meeting. But the purpose of this meeting is to share news, strategic plans, resources, and tools related to embodied carbon, to report planning and future dates for conferences, webinars, and meetings that we're all engaged in, or different organizations are helping to organize or facilitate. We want to inspire and facilitate ongoing communication and conversations among key leaders related to embodied carbon. And we want to really encourage convergence across the industry on shared embodied carbon technology, data, standards, benchmarks, and targets for reducing embodied carbon. And so I want to welcome all of you to this meeting. I also want to just point out that about a week ago, the Biden administration released a data sheet from the White House, really especially targeted at the transformation of the industrial and manufacturing, and which included building materials. And there were a good number of components of that data sheet that reflected the breadth and the intensity of focus on and genuine progress on reducing embodied carbon, and including a good number of tools and funds and support from the Biden administration on efforts to decarbonize materials and building construction in the United States, especially. So we're really happy about that. As we get going on the meeting, I'll put a link to that data sheet in the chat window so that you'll be able to see it. And it's just a really great reflection of the progress that we made over the last 4 years, especially in, first of all, recognizing the significance of the understanding the complete carbon challenge, both operational carbon and embodied carbon, and also increasingly focusing on the thing that we need to do a lot of work on really fast, and to really focus on in order to meet the climate targets that the world has set. So with that as kind of an introduction, what I'd like to do is first of all, ask all of you to go to the chat window and type in your name and your organization and where you are in the world, the city or the town where you're sitting right now, so that all of us will have a great record of everybody who is here. And secondly, we're going to kind of start it on the meeting. We've got, I think, reports lined up from 18 different organizations, and we have a total of 90 minutes for the entire meeting set. It may well be possible for us to come in under that 90 minutes. And if so, I would be happy to free you all to return to your ordinary lives, which may not be quite as exciting as this meeting, but nonetheless are going to be richer for it. So to start with, I'm looking for somebody in a window who I think is not here, but I've got on the agenda. And so that person is not here yet. So
you're looking for Webley?
Yeah, I am, as a matter of fact.
Yeah. Well, I'm a poor substitute for Webley. I'm Jim Edelson from MBI.
Great.
I'm in Portland, Oregon, with the West Coast team.
I would say you're not a poor you are a substitute, but not a poor substitute. This meeting is going to be run according to the principles of appreciative inquiry. We're looking for great things from the New Buildings Institute. So, Jim, why don't you go ahead and take it away, and let me make sure that you all know that if you are one of the people giving a report, I'm going to make you a co-host of the meeting so that you can share your screen for slides if you find that helpful. So why don't you go right ahead, Jim?
Yeah, I wasn't prepared with slides. So yeah, we're doing a lot of work, continuing work on codes and standards. And Webley's involved in the Calgary effort and some city efforts. But mostly what I want to give an update is on ASHRAE 189.1, where MBI is a voting organizational member, and two addendum, which are sort of updates to the 189/2020 standard, are now pending. Addendum Z would make EPD disclosure across several product categories mandatory in projects that has gone out for public review. It is now being, all the public comments that came back are now being addressed. We hope that goes to full publication with one or two more public responses to these comments. And the other exciting development is that DA21, which we've been working on since December 2020, which would set a procurement standard for a range of product materials and products at 125% of industry-wide EPD values. And this would be a jurisdictional option, which is just, cities could adopt it, but this would be the first national vetted language for a procurement standard for building products. And this is for the National Green Standard for commercial buildings and the high-rise residential. And it also becomes an International Green Conservation Code in North America. So we hope it's out for ballot right now, which is an ANSI process, and Alice can explain more about the ANSI process, but we hope it will pass the ballot and go out for public review. So look for that. And we're going to be putting together a plan, and we hope to request comments from several of you when it goes out for public review to influence the NC process at ASHRAE. So that's my quick update, Andrew.
That was great. Thank you very much, Jim. And then next on the agenda, we've got Peter Backus from the Port Authority of New York, New Jersey, who's going to have to leave shortly after he speaks. So we put him close to the top of the agenda. Peter, why don't you go right ahead?
Sure. Thank you for the introduction, Andrew. And sorry, everyone in advance for having to leave. I managed to get myself triple booked for this time slot in the fact that I had a meeting in Chicago. I had another meeting that was supposed to be in Colorado, as well as this. So I'm going to make this quick. Thank you all for letting me go first. Like Andrew said, my name is Peter Backus. I'm with Paul Carpenter Associates for the Port Authority of New York and New Jersey. I'm going to give a brief overview on all the progress we've been making. We have draft specification changes coming to our Portland cement concrete spec to include GWP limits based on Port Authority mix designs from the past 4-ish years. It's based on our data that we were able to quantify using an academic study to determine the A1 GWP emissions. We have draft specifications currently underway for a structural steel spec in which we are using ASC industry averages plus 25%, since we have a significantly less amount of agency specific data, but we want to keep on pushing ahead. We're doing a similar review on our historical rebar data, similar to how we went about our structural steel, so that we should be beginning draft specifications on rebar. We've been doing outreach to our local asphalt producers, associated general contractors, state APAs regarding our asphalt pavements to see what specification changes we can do there to account for lower embodied carbon standards while we're still collecting additional EPDs. So we're talking about things such as putting in ramp minimums, looking at how we're currently requiring or not requiring more mixed asphalt to see what we can do to have a reduction in our lower embodied or to reduce our embodied carbon from asphalt. Tangentially, we're also pushing ahead on trying to do project level quantification of embodied carbon during construction. So once we know what mixes are actually being approved for use or what products are being approved for use, quantifying it on A1 to A3, we're building out A4 and A5 since we collect our on-site diesel equipment that we're backing into emission quantifications of what the on-site emissions are for that, as well as starting to track our C&D waste from our projects that are being moved off-site and also trying to quantify the impacts with that. I know it's really short. Again, I got triple booked, so I apologize, but we're doing a bunch of different things here at the Port Authority. I think it's always important to always keep in touch with everyone. So thank you, Andrew, for putting me up front. And with that, I think that's about it for our update. So stay tuned for formal spec changes. They are actually in the work. They will be coming.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Peter. That's great things to hear from your part of the world. And our next speaker is Gitika Mota from the We Mean Business Coalition, a brand new member of the NGO and Government Roundtable. Just met Gitika and her organization, which has a sizable impact and a big footprint. So Gitika, please take it away.
Thank you, Andrew. Good to be here. I was wondering if I could just share my screen because I just wanted to show 1 or 2 slides, if that's okay.
Yes, please. And I've already made you a co-host of the meeting.
Okay, brilliant. Okay. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Brilliant. Okay. Yeah. So just very quickly, I'm with We Mean Business Coalition. We are a globally focused organization. We do, I would say, 2 things. We do more than that, but 2 things are our primary focus. One is coalition building and management. We were created by 7 nonprofits back in 2015 to align the nonprofit community in our asks to business and in our initiatives that we put out to businesses to be part of. And we do strategic regranting. That's one of the mechanisms through which we have a portfolio impact. We build that network of NGO partners and so on and so forth. So our primary stakeholder is business, where we try to get businesses to move on ambition, action, advocacy, and accountability, the 4 A's as we call it. But we also work with enabling stakeholders such as policymakers or the finance community, academia, so on and so forth. So in this, I just wanted to show you our effort is to really move these 6 systems and to have defined 2030 goals for each of the systems. I am based in New York, and I manage our work on built environment and industry, both interrelated. And on built environment, our focus is on in the next 2 years, I would say in 2023 and 2024, which is kind of what we have, which is what we're building a portfolio for. Our focus is going to be on kind of clarifying and amplifying the whole life carbon approach through our partners, and on implementing progressive policies and building codes. And our focus in the next 2 years is really going to be on in the developing South. So at this point, I don't have a full view of the portfolio yet. It's still taking shape, but in the next 2 years, it's going to be most likely focused on India and Mexico. So less US focused, more developing South. One of our partners actually that we're going to be primarily working with 3 partners in the next 2 years. That's the Climate Group, WBCSD. I see Luca, who's on the call, and he can tell you more about the work that actually they do and we support. World GBC, and the World Resources Institute. So those 4 partners are really going to be our anchor partners in delivering the built environment work, which is going to be focused on India and in Mexico on ramping up net zero carbon buildings, adoption of the whole life carbon approach, and on pushing through progressive policies and codes. So stay tuned. Happy to give more detail to anyone interested, and happy to get on one-on-one calls with anyone who would like to share and learn more about each other's work. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Gitika. As a matter of fact, I'd like to adjust the order of speakers just a little bit and ask Luca Giovannetti from the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. Would you please go next? I think that would be a great package to follow up Gitika.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Andrew, and yeah, nice to be here. Hi, Gitika.
And
yeah,
Gitika,
so happy to
please just unshare your screen. There you go. All right. Go ahead, Luca.
Thanks. So yeah, obviously, yeah, happy to share what we will do. So I actually wanted to share one thing is about the publication we are doing now on embodied carbon, one about COP26, and the other one, quick remark on a workshop that I just attended 2 days ago in London on All Life Carbon, and I'm sure some of you might have been there as well, in virtually at least. So on the publication, we publishing now a report on demonstrating solutions that enable to at least halve the embodied carbon. So the idea is that what is needed to halve the emissions on embodied carbon to achieve the vision of halving emission by 2030, net zero by 2050, and what is needed to get to the objective to have net zero building in operation by 2030 and at least 40, if not 50% reduction in embodied carbon. So the report is building on the work we did before on the building system carbon framework to measure all life carbon, and the report we did with Arup on where do we stand, kind of measuring emissions of all life carbon. This is focusing on demonstrating a solution to halve emissions. So we're finalizing the report now. We should be able to publish by end of November, beginning of December. So watch the space. So, and this is really very relevant to this network. Then maybe just quickly again on the workshop that I mentioned that I attended yesterday. It was a 2 days workshop organized by the UK government base in collaboration with the Global Alliance for Building and Construction, and was to bring together various organizations or academia and special government on the all life carbon narrative. And most of the discussion was very much on how do we, the aspect related of embodied carbon. I think the idea would be what is needed to be done more in that space, and how we do to get more engagement across the different organizations and sharing more knowledge. So this was one start and was very much initiated by the UK government, but they would definitely like to replicate that more often and bring in more knowledge. I think one remark was mentioned that, of course, it was hybrid, but obviously time zone has an impact generally on their participation. So I don't know if any one of you was there, but recording, I assume they might be made available. And I think it's anyway a nice opportunity to be involved going forward. And I assume that there will be, so definitely further support. So I think the Carbon Leadership Forum was, don't know in which form was there. So, and the last thing is definitely about COP26. So that's obviously something that takes a lot of time at the moment, is because of
COP27, I think.
Did I say 26?
Yeah.
I'm still at that one. Yeah, now COP27 indeed.
Really rapidly, Luca.
No, it's just just wanted to make everybody aware that there will be a buildings pavilion, which is Global ABC coordinating that, and supported, co-hosted as well by Women Business and WBCSD, and is really a 2 weeks space for buildings with many different topics. So check out on that, and look on maybe also on the Global ABC website or the Building to COP website.
Great, thank you so much, Luca.
You're welcome.
And next on the agenda, another organization that's just recently, or just in the last month or so, joined the NGO Roundtable, or NGO Government Roundtable, and that would be Build Change. And I think we have both Monica Schoner. I think I've just totally butchered your name. I apologize for that. Monica Schoder, right? And
Schrader.
Schrader. All right. I'm going to just give up. I surrender.
Fair enough.
Monica and Louise, take over the meeting for just a minute here. And tell us all about Build Change. It sounds like an incredible organization, and also one with a big footprint.
All right. I'm going to share some slides quickly. Can you see that? I'm not seeing the green. You can see the slides, right? Cool. No, thanks so much. We're excited to join this community. I feel like we've already been learning a lot from what you've been putting out. So I'm excited to contribute back a little bit. I'm just going to show you 3 slides to tell you about who we are, if you don't already know, and then what we're doing in embodied carbon and what's brought us here. So this is kind of who we are in some little graphics. As you probably got from that image, we're all about housing, and resilient housing in particular. We're a multidisciplinary team that works to transform systems in resilient housing for regulating, financing, building and improving houses globally around the world. And we do this by working with a whole range of different people, from homeowners up to governments to finance institutions, to try and tackle the root causes of why people aren't living in safe housing. And then in terms of the kind of work we do and what's brought us here with you this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are. In the past, it's really a recent thing that we've been looking into, because in the past we've always thought about what we do as climate adaptation work. Most of the communities that we work with are already experiencing the effects of climate change. So this example here is from the Sula Valley in Honduras, which was badly affected by hurricanes Eta and Iota last year, and certainly we're expecting to flood again. Our program there is all about retrofitting the existing home to better withstand the hurricanes that we know are coming back, but to also add a second story. So retrofitting the first story to take a second story, so that people there have somewhere to go when the floodwaters rise. And this is kind of an example of a lot of housing improvement programs that we do everywhere. And so we kind of got to thinking, well, actually, by repurposing and improving what's already there, we're actually kind of working on climate mitigation as well as adaptation. And we wanted to dig into that a bit more and try and quantify it. So that led us down the path of looking into our embodied carbon. And it's really hard trying to do these calculations in the context that we're working in, because there's just not a lot of data available. But we thought it was important to get started. So we've been kind of doing this historic look back. So far, what we're finding is that compared to an equivalent new construction, we're saving about 40 to 60% of equivalent CO2. On average, that's about 10 tons of CO2 per building, per small masonry house like the ones I just showed you. That kind of range depends on whether we're working post-disaster or preventatively, the amount of repair we have to do, whether we're doing an expansion as well or not. But we're excited to use this as one of the many reasons to advocate for improving existing housing around the world. So as I said, really excited to be part of this. This is who we are and the kind of main people who've been involved with this. If you'd like to talk more, we'd love to talk to you, so please reach out. And yeah, excited to remain part of this forum. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much, Louise. Appreciate that update, and I'm excited about this combination of regeneration and adaptation and reduction of carbon. That's the comprehensive and strategic point of view that I think is really important. And then we have another new member of the NGO Roundtable. It's Abigail Rajitsky from Breakthrough Energy, which has recently become a strong partner of the Carbon Leadership Forum also. So Abigail, welcome, and thank you very much for joining us, and tell us about what is Breakthrough Energy doing related to embodied carbon.
Thanks, Andrew. I am also going to attempt to share my screen, though I haven't done this on Zoom actually in a while.
Just succeeded. We can see.
Okay, great. So hi, everyone. As Andrew said, I'm Abigail Rajitsky from Breakthrough Energy. So I'll give a little bit of background of Breakthrough Energy first for those who are not familiar, but really we're a network of initiatives all focused on scaling the technologies we need to get to net zero by 2050. So reducing that 51 billion tons of GHG emissions that are emitted worldwide down to zero. We do this through several different types of programs. So I sit on our US policy and advocacy team, which is kind of that top arrow that spans across everything else there. We also have a Europe team that works in Europe on a lot of these issues. But since I know the US, that's what I'm going to talk most about today. But some of the other programs under the Breakthrough Energy umbrella, you can see here, we're really focused on innovation and developing these technologies that we're going to need. And you may have heard of these kind of innovation valleys of death, where technology is trying to go from earlier stages to later stages, have this kind of gap in funding, and you need to cross this valley to kind of get to the next stage. And so what we try to do is really be able to support technologies all across this kind of technology maturity timeline, from basic research to startup, really technology development, and then large scale commercialization and deployment. And we have programs that try to address each of these different valleys of death between technology stages, starting from our fellows program, which is kind of like an accelerator incubator, really focused on supporting the entrepreneur who has, the idea and the technology that they want to build. Then we have our venture portfolio arm, which is kind of a separate, for-profit entity, but they're really investing in startups who are trying to build these different technologies. And again, everything at Breakthrough is very climate focused. And so all these different programs, they're all very specific to, climate, clean energy technologies. And then finally, one of our newer programs is Breakthrough Energy Catalyst, and this is really focused on project financing. So how to bring together philanthropic, public, private capital to really start financing kind of first of a kind commercial scale projects in the types of technologies that we think are necessary. So for example, things like green hydrogen or direct air capture are, two of the things that Catalyst focuses on. And then our, policy work spans across all of these and really focused on what are the policies that we need in place to be able to help all of these, technologies develop, commercialize, and deploy. So here's just a quick snapshot of, the types of things we think about on the policy front that's across different sectors and technologies. So that's innovation, innovation funding, things like financial incentives like tax credits that, we're happy to see that big package in the Inflation Reduction Act that was passed, through investing in infrastructure, which I like to think of both physical and data infrastructure, which I think is really important in the embodied carbon space. And then, of course, creating kind of markets for the materials and technologies themselves to get deployed. So more specific in kind of the industrial decarbonization world and embodied carbon, which is what I lead on our policy team in the US. This kind of gives a snapshot of our kind of policy areas that we play in. And we do this largely through grant making of partners, grantees, some of whom are on the call today, as well as direct advocacy and as a kind of convener as well. So again, as I mentioned, the kind of first piece on investment, so that's things like implementation of many of the great things that were passed in the Inflation Reduction Act, as well as the infrastructure bill. Things like appropriations for DOE, for industrial decarb, as well as state incentives and investments. And then the second piece being this market demand piece, creating the markets for the lower emissions materials, which is what a lot of the kind of embodied carbon by clean work that we fund and participate in kind of falls into this bucket. So that's, federal by clean implementation of the EO, as well as things in IRA, state by clean, as well as private procurement programs as well that we're involved in. And then the final piece being that kind of broader deployment strategy. So looking more at things like making sure there's embodied carbon in codes and standards. So some of the things Jim's already mentioned and is working on, moving to performance-based, standards and codes rather than prescriptive. And then things like clean product standard as an eventual kind of policy goal to really bring these materials, more broadly deployed. And then underlying all three of these different specific policy mechanisms, this kind of analysis and data infrastructure. So this is where, things like EPDs and LCAs, EC3, emissions benchmarking, techno-economic analyses for, how you decarbonize steel and cement, kind of put this in this bucket that then helps inform, the policies that are on the top. So yeah, this is probably a lot, but this is a snapshot of the types of things that, we're supporting, advocating for over at Breakthrough, related to on embodied carbon and industrial decarb. And yeah, happy to connect with anyone who's interested. Thanks.
Great, thanks a lot, Abigail. And by the way, that is an extraordinary set of slides. And I'm really interested in diving more deeply into what you just presented. So I want to ask Abigail, as well as our previous presenters, Jim and Peter and Gitika and Louise, would you please make available the slides that you shared with us with a link in the chat window, and I'll publish those links so that the rest of the folks on the call can take a deeper look at what you've been presenting and talking about. So just a request to all of you, plus the speakers to come as well. If you could just put a link to in the chat window, as I already have, by the way, to the article on the Inflation Reduction Act and all of the things that are happening around the country, around the world that are in some way related to that act and its impact on embodied carbon. So the next person we have to speak would be Irene Dominguez from Bologna, Europa, another new participant in the NGO and Government Roundtable, and I'm delighted that you can join us, Irene. It's great to see you, and we all want to learn a lot more about Bologna, Europa.
Thank you so much. First of all, let me apologize if there is any ambient noise. As I mentioned, I'm in Bauma at Munich. So there's a bit of people going around. Let me know if you cannot understand. But it's great to be here. I didn't want to miss this meeting because it feels super relevant to what I'm working on. I'm actually, I work for Bologna Europa. We are an environmental NGO focusing on climate policy, mostly in the EU. And we work on industrial decarbonization, renewables and hydrogen, circularity, carbon capture and carbon dioxide removal, and carbon accounting as well. Within Embodied Carbon is a program that we just started, and we are looking to the most relevant European policy files, and we're trying to advocate for getting the right measures around embodied carbon in the EU. We're actually also organizing a COP27 event. We have a pavilion there. It's going to be there for the 2 weeks. And our event is going to be focused on embodied carbon in the Swedish state, the 17th of November. And it's about bringing the topic to the table and hold it as a conversation between national authorities and a conversation within the cities experts. We are going to have the city of Oslo presenting, and also one of our attendees to this meeting, Pamela Conrad, which we are super excited to have her present about climate positive design and be part of the panel as well. So I don't know if we are going to be able to stream it yet, but if we do, or if you're there, you're of course invited, and we will send the links and all the relevant information. And yeah, I think one resource that may be useful for the group that we have at Bologna is zero emission construction machinery database. Now, I will share the link with you in the chat later, and we there showcase all the zero emission machinery that is available in the market for public authorities and public procurement to know that they have the options to really bring down the embodied carbon in the construction phase of the building. And it's been a pleasure to be here, and of course, happy to connect with everyone. I hope you have been able to understand me.
Yeah. I could understand you quite well, Irene. That was great. And if you have a moment after this call, perhaps you could send me an email with links to documents that you referenced or the projects that you're talking about, and I'll add those to the agenda.
Yes, definitely. I actually prepared that presentation for this meeting, but I couldn't. I wasn't expecting to be here, so I will share the slides and all the relevant links. Thank you. Great.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
And the next person, we have another new participant in our roundtable. Is one that I'm especially excited about, and Alice Yates. I'm really glad that you're here, and glad that you can share with us what's happening with ASHRAE. And I'm especially delighted that ASHRAE has recently become an advocate and partner with the MEP 2040 initiative, which you can say something more about as well. But I think we also have Francis Yang from SC 2050. So go ahead, Alice.
Alice Yates. I'm with ASHRAE. I'm on staff with ASHRAE. I'm in the Washington, D.C. office, Director of Government Affairs. And as Andrew pointed out, literally 2 weeks ago in Istanbul, we had a board meeting in Istanbul. And at that meeting, our board approved ASHRAE joining as a supporter to MEP 2040. And I'm delighted to share that news, and we're delighted to be on board with this great team. For those of you that aren't familiar with ASHRAE, we've been around for over 125 years, founded in 1894. And what I like to say is we've been doing decarbonization, for over 125 years as we've engaged with energy efficiency, energy reductions. And since that time, of course, we've expanded much more beyond energy efficiency into water system safety, indoor air quality, and now with embodied carbon. So that's sort of moving into the interconnectedness, the integration of buildings with transportation systems, energy systems, and with the just integration of the entire communities in the built environment. We are a membership organization, so we're a society of professionals, primarily in the HVACR industry, but we also have architects, contractors, building owners, etc. We're global, so we have members from all around the world in over 130 countries. As Jim Edelson pointed out, standards are one of our main focuses, or foci, I should say. We are one of 5 ANSI accredited organizations in America, and we also get our standards into ISO standards. So the ANSI process is quite laborious, and happy to share more about that if you are so inclined. But basically, this is a consensus-based process, so we get buy-in from all of the different sectors. And I think that's what makes ASHRAE standards strong. We have research, we have members in universities, et cetera. Our mission has been focused, on HVACR, but our vision is to create a healthy and sustainable built environment for all. And I think, again, there's some blurring of the lines as we, look at zero carbon buildings. It's really hard to separate the HVACR systems from the building envelope, the materials. And so we are working across other organizations and other partners so that we can be in better alignment. I want to just run through these lines really quickly. This has been a big kind of pivot with ASHRAE, that we have taken the position that eliminating greenhouse gas emissions from the built environment is essential to address climate change. That seems like a very basic statement, but from those that are involved in the industry, those we're not an advocacy organization. This was a big sea change for ASHRAE to make this statement. And Jim Edelson was part of a group that worked on a position document that got us there. These are more specific goals to meet the 2030 and 2050 goals. But I should point out that we were, again, engaged in decarbonization throughout our history. And in 1975, we were engaged with the federal government to create the Model Energy Efficiency Code for the United States in 1975 during the energy crisis. We now have a climate crisis, and that's why we've stood up the Task Force for Building Decarbonization last year that's pursuing a number of initiatives. These are some of our key commitments. And as you can see, we're looking at the whole building life cycle assessment, not just the HVACR systems, not just energy efficiency. And we're working on standards, guidance, technical guides, so that we can achieve a fully decarbonized built environment by 2050. This is some organizational issues of where our task force is located in the organization. We have over 100 technical committees, and this is a brief graphic that kind of shows the matrix of how we're integrated with our technical committees. And again, with over 51,000 members, we're working with a lot of experts from around the world. Our task force in building decarbonization is working on standards, education, technical tools, and we've recently released a position document on building decarbonization. One of the things for this group in terms of embodied carbon that I wanted to point out is the whole life design guide for MEP systems. And then this slide, it might be kind of hard to read, but we're looking at taking CIBC TM65, which is embodied carbon in building services. And it's a calculation methodology. And again, it's this to get us all on the same page. And so our metrics and standards are aligned. So we're excited about that. And I'll just run through, then we have some other guides that we'll be getting out within the next year to year and a half, and then also looking at the standards. And another standard I wanted to point out for this group is 240p, which is a whole life carbon standard that we're working on with the International Code Council that is intended for adoption by jurisdictions. And I'm sorry that 189.1 isn't listed here, but that vote, I believe, took place 2 days ago. So this slide needs to be updated accordingly. And I think the other thing with what Jim's report said is that it's out for public review. So I can't really report on it until it gets through all of the necessary hurdles and milestones that the ANSI process requires. We're working on education, collaboration, and I think I'll just leave it at that. And again, I just am delighted that we're part of this group, and thank you, Andrew, for your leadership and for bringing all these folks together. We look forward to continuing to collaborate and share resources. Thank you so much.
Fantastic, Alice. That was just great. I think I'm going to be walking around the rest of the day with, about a foot off the ground. It feels just wonderful that ASHRAE is really getting on board with the decarbonization movement and providing the leadership and the support that you can strategically and globally. So I'm really glad that you're here.
And actually, I should add that last 2 weeks ago, the board in Istanbul approved that 90.1 should go to net zero in 3 cycles by the year 2031. So that will come in the most likely appendix in 90.1.
Thank you, Luke. And
I didn't see you, sorry.
Yeah, thanks, Luke. And by the way, I want to adjust the agenda a little bit right now. If you don't mind, Luke, could you tell us something about what is MEP 2040? I've been on a bi-weekly call with this guy for the last 18 months, I think. And Luke is one of the members of the steering committee of the MEP 2040 initiative, and also a significant part of the ASHRAE decarbonization ship. So would you please take it over, Luke, and tell us what we are up to?
Yeah, the grand goal of it is to try to have a net zero whole life carbon by 2040 in MEP. So the recent movement, including maybe some of you saw it already, the White House actually mentioned MEP 2040 as one of the movement to get to this embodied carbon information, specifically on the MEP side, which is a little behind. So in the last quarterly meeting, we met with the owners and have the owners' voices verbalizing why they want that. So in the upcoming meeting, in the next quarterly meeting, we will be working with the manufacturers. Now there are 4 different groups in our movement. One is the refrigerant. I think the refrigerant piece, some of you saw that we actually, as we have signed on to the Montreal Protocol. I think it's the appendix that rule out some of the not so good refrigerant, like 410A. So that is moving forward. And on the benchmarking side, we are actually working with different manufacturers to start providing some of the EPD for the industry. More to come about that. And regarding the outreach, we've been talking to different people. Some of you here might be talking to us in the past on how do we get together to kind of sing in harmony together with different disciplines and providing that MEP and body carbon information. So we are moving forward in different aspects of it. I don't know, Andrew, do you want to anything to add?
Yeah, did you say the focus of the next quarterly forum, the next MEP quarterly forum? Great.
Yeah, we did. And part of that is, oh, by the way, there's a couple of things also exciting is like Alice mentioned, we are working with CIFSI TM6T5 to provide this EPD Lite for manufacturers so they can use an Excel spreadsheet and start providing a kind of range of MEP and body carbon information. And also ASHRAE maybe also with MEP 2040 is looking at another standard course TM66, which can be potentially one of the first circular economy standard in US, focus on how do we recycle everything. So yeah, that is also happening too.
Great, thank you very much, Luke. Appreciate that report. And now, Vincent Martinez, if you don't mind, I'll call on you. I know that you'll have to leave in just a little bit. So if you wouldn't mind telling us what's up to date with Architecture 2030, and especially I know that you've got a significant bit of work ahead and some travel perhaps ahead of you in the next couple of weeks to go to COP27.
Oh, sure, Andrew. I was happy to go later in the agenda as you had outlined, and I would just provide in the chat. So I didn't mean to cut ahead of anybody by making my chat with you, but just I'll go quickly. For those of you that will be in Egypt for COP27, Architecture 2030, ASHRAE, that you heard from Alice, and the International Network of Women Scientists and Engineers and Scientists will be hosting an official UNFCCC side event on November 16th. I'll put a chat link to the website for this into the chat, but we'll be talking about the rapid development of the Global South by and from those that are operating and living in the Global South. We'll provide an overview presentation from Architecture 2030, and then we'll be hearing from leading practitioners from our partners at ASHRAE and INWES, as well as leading design firms on the landscape architecture, planning, and architecture front. So keep an eye out for that. We're also spending more time, and we'll have an update on the intersection of embodied carbon reduction in existing buildings. Luis talked about this, of the importance of reusing our existing embodied carbon in our existing infrastructure, and we see this as a critical area of focus. We've taken on shepherding of the CARE tool, which is the carbon avoided retrofit estimator, which I know this forum has heard before, but there's a lot of new voices. So this is a tool to help unlock the value of building reuse. And we'll be taking it into an online portal here next week and launching a soft launch at Greenbuild. The concept here is to quantify the embodied carbon benefits of keeping and reusing existing buildings rather than tearing them down and building new ones. And it takes into account a number of regional factors. Luis, I know you mentioned your work, the challenges of data in other regions. This is mostly focused right now on the North American region, but we're hoping that we can scale it to other regions with data as appropriate. I'll just move forward with some of these real quickly. We are hosting a happy hour event at Greenbuild. If you happen to be in San Francisco next week, you're all are welcome. I'll drop the link to the Eventbrite sign up in the chat. It'll be at EHDD's office on Pier 1 on November 2nd in the evening. And then highlight that Architecture 2030 and Climate Positive Design are embarking on a new partnership. You'll hear from Pamela Conrad in just a second, but we really are hoping to focus on the exterior built environment and its impact on embodied and operating emissions. You know, there's estimates that the heavy materials usage is about half of it goes towards the vertical infrastructure, more typical buildings, and then about half would go to horizontal infrastructure. So here we're talking about a whole new set of players in the embodied carbon world, including landscape architects who've been leading under Pamela's leadership, but also civil and environmental engineers, and urban planning and opportunities, not just through procurement of these, but looking at design and planning opportunities to reduce the need for embodied carbon emissions from heavy materials. So in addition to that, there's a lot of sequestration opportunity, which I'm sure Pamela has talked about in the past around vegetation and living in nature-based systems. So really excited about embarking on this new adventure with Pamela. There you go.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Vincent. And as a matter of fact, we've got Pamela on the call. Pamela, would you mind just dropping in and telling us something about the new role that you're embracing right now and the work that you'll be doing?
Yeah, happy to. Did you hear it, Nago?
Yes.
All right. How about now?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay, all right. Sorry about that. Hi, everyone. Good to see you all. And yeah, really excited about the opportunities ahead for collaborating with Architecture 2030. We have an exciting kind of program laid out for the next couple of years of developing some more tangible resources for implementation of low carbon strategies and increased carbon sequestration.
Pamela, you're muted again, or we're not hearing you.
For everybody to take action in the work that they're doing every day. And also, I for those of you who weren't here last time, I was selected to be a Loeb Fellow. So I'm actually participating in the program this year at Harvard at the Graduate School of Design. And so taking advantage of all the opportunities here and collaborations and lots of exciting things to get involved with, energy around students and climate action, and just a plethora of people to collaborate here. So I'll be sure to bring back some of those resources to the group as they appear.
Great. Thank you so much, Pamela. And thanks for going on the spur of the moment when I didn't have you planned. So we're a little bit spontaneous around here. We try to be. And then somebody else that we've got on the call is Jessica Bristow from ILFI, or the International Living Futures Institute. Delighted to see you, Jessica. And
hello, everybody.
It's great to welcome ILFI back to the roundtable. So please take it away and tell us what you all are up to.
Great. Yeah. Is everyone able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Sorry, I'm working on the fly a little bit here. Hi, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. My name is Jessica Bristow, as Andrew mentioned, and I'm the new Energy and Carbon Lead at ILFI. So I'm nested within the Programs and Innovation Group. So basically my role at ILFI is being responsible for developing and evolving our standards as they relate to all of these interconnected energy topics. Whether it's embodied carbon, EUI targets, LCAs, renewables, et cetera. I don't have any slides to share, but I can talk through some of the big things we're working on. So one of the big endeavors currently is that we are leading ILFI's first technical advisory groups, which I see some familiar faces on this call. So in those groups, we'll be taking on discussions over like big operational and embodied carbon topics, both to improve like ILFI's ambitious standards, but also to build towards the next version of these programs, whether it's ZE, ZC, or the energy imperatives that we have in our Living Building Challenge. Also, we're diving in on evolving some of our stances on LCA requirements, existing buildings and reuse. We're very excited for the CARE tool to be coming out, talking about carbon caps, portfolio scale, decarb strategies, and really looking at what's next, the new best practices for these performance-based strategies with embodied carbon for interiors and existing projects. We know that that's like a frontier that's changing quite a bit, and we want to make sure that ILFI is sort of a group that pushes ahead of these standards that were there. On that topic, we're also gearing up for a stronger policy impact and consideration here at ILFI and within the programs and innovation team that I'm on specifically. As we all know on this call, and I think is like wonderfully represented here, policy and codes are seeing such amazing strides right now. And ILFI wants to be sure that we're still pushing the trajectory ahead, keeping things attainable and aligned across, but making sure that what we have in our standards is really pushing to be aspirational and shooting ahead of things. So yeah, one other thing I'll be working on is the alignment within our own programs. So making sure that across our zero energy, zero carbon, and the energy pedal of Living Building Challenge are aligned. And like I said, aligned and looking forward, as well as fixing any things that are discussions that arise in the meantime, especially when it comes to like LCA and CARE tool, these different tools that we have now that are rapidly growing, making sure that we have standards in place, but also flexibility for teams to make the best and most regenerative buildings that they can make. But yeah, I'm really excited to be here and to meet all of you and be involved in all of these discussions moving forward. So thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Jessica. That is great to hear. ILFI has been a real leader over a lot of years, and it's really great to see your engagement and your leadership in this specific regard. Integrating all of those things is really essential. And then we've got Allison Kin-Bennett from the EPA. I'm delighted to welcome you to this call. And would you please tell us something about what the EPA is up to, and especially, I think you could tell us something specific about the impact of the IRA, or that's not the Irish Republican Army, I think.
Right.
On embodied carbon.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to getting to know all of you much more. I'll note my colleague Danny McRae from our Energy Star Industrial Program is here, and our programs are working very closely to try to deliver on what we call it IRA, Andrew, what IRA has given us. So IRA invests $350 million in my program, which is the EPA Environmentally Preferable Purchasing Program, or inside the Pollution Prevention Program, to establish new grants, technical assistance, and other tools to help the construction materials sector do a number of things: measuring, documenting, standardizing, declaring, certifying, potentially labeling efforts to lower embodied carbon. Real quick, just to give you a sense of who we are and why our little program inside EPA, we have 30 years of expertise in the pollution prevention program and in providing technical and financial assistance to U.S. manufacturers. We are in the business of leveraging private sector standards and eco-labels, and we understand how to set verifiable environmental performance-based requirements via standards and eco-labels. We also are engaged in and understand the needs of the U.S. federal procurement community. And something else I hope gives you some confidence in our program here is that we take a multi-attribute life cycle approach, so that we don't lose sight of key environmental hotspots when we are focusing on embodied carbon. We want to understand, for asphalt paving, not only embodied carbon, but climate resiliency and stormwater permeability. For other interior building materials, we want to understand the indoor air quality impacts. We're looking at the opportunities for salvage and reuse. Excited to hear about the CARE tool, recycled content, bio-based content, reducing the impacts of hazardous chemicals, et cetera. These are all administration priorities we hope to bring to this IRA programs. So I just quickly say that we're still in the early planning phases. We hope to offer a series of stakeholder engagement opportunities in the coming months to help us shape these new programs and funding opportunities. I'll say as one of our first steps, other parts of IRA ask EPA to help determine for the General Services Administration and Federal Highways Administration what would qualify for their spending on lower embodied carbon materials. So we're working really hard so that those agencies can move forward on their billions of dollars in spending on lower carbon materials. We will continue to work with federal buyers and the input they're receiving from the market. Hopefully you're seeing some of these requests for information and responding. We will likely be putting one out, one as well. We'll be learning from all of those federal efforts to inform the implementation of the environmental product declaration standardization and technical assistance and new carbon labeling efforts under IRA. I'll say that just next week, keep an eye out as a first step to augment my program's traditional work in leveraging private sector standards and eco-labels. We'll be putting a call out for interested private sector standards and eco-labels to raise their hand and volunteer to be assessed by my program in the building and construction and other sectors to help us get a sense of where we might be able to leverage additional private sector eco labels to support IRA and other administration goals. So, still much to be determined here for EPA. I can say, though, that private sector standards and all the work of this group will really help to shape how we implement our IRA obligations and reach, not only our net zero emission procurement goals, but also safer chemicals goals and other administration sustainability priorities. So, Danny, I saw you come on. Feel free to augment my comments.
Yep, I think that was a really good overview, Allison. I was just putting my video on since you called me out.
Okay, well, Energy Star is going to be doing a lot of work to help us. They have a long history in focusing on these key sectors of buy clean and the opportunities for greater energy efficiency, including some measurement work there that'll inform our work.
Great. Thank you so much, Allison and Daniel. Very happy to welcome you to these meetings. And I find the work that you're doing really inspirational and exciting. It's work that can potentially be catalytic across the industry. So thank you very much for doing it. And next, another organization that is new to the NGO Roundtable and Government Roundtable is the Mass Design Group. And this is a highly unusual design organization. I've been a fan of Mass Design Group for years and years. So I'm just really delighted that James can join us this morning and tell us something about the work that you all do.
Hey, thanks for having me. Can I share my screen quickly? It looks like that. So, what screen can you see? Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Great. Okay. Yeah. Well, I'm James. I work for Mass Design Group. I'm formerly trained as a structural engineer, but my role is confusing nowadays. Climate activist is probably a bit closer. I'm just going to give a very quick introduction to Mass, just so people have an idea of who we are and what we do. This is Mass. It's 250 designers, engineers, researchers, writers, and we have offices in Boston, Poughkeepsie, Santa Fe, and in Rwanda, Kigali, where I spent 4 years working prior to this. We do a lot of design work. This is the Rwanda Institute for Conservation Agriculture, which we're very proud of. It's 65 buildings built from stone, clay, and wood, and it's wrapping up this year. From an embodied carbon perspective, this has reduced the upfront emissions by 60%, and it's being powered completely by solar power, PV array, and through reforestation of the Savannah woodland, it's expected to be climate positive by 2040. And it's being noticed outside of Rwanda, and I think that it's kind of an indication that people are ready for a different type of architecture. We do a lot of policy work as well. The government of Rwanda asked us to write the Adobe building code. Adobe is a form of earth construction, and the supporting documents for that, which we finished a couple of months ago. Before this, Adobe construction was illegal, and if the 2 million homes that are needed in Rwanda in the next 10 years are built from Adobe instead of fired brick, it will save about 6 million tons of carbon dioxide. And that's the same as turning off 15 natural gas power plants for a year. And we perform a lot of research as well, and that's to influence primarily design. I'm halfway through a 2-year embodied carbon research project to support built environment practitioners to measure and reduce embodied carbon. So far, we have written a guidance document, performed benchmarking study, and created a embodied carbon calculator that's specific to Rwanda. I think Louise was mentioning the challenge of locally applicable data. Yeah, we have that problem. The second year of research that we just started now is really getting the other stakeholders on board, which includes manufacturers, developers, and policymakers. And there's lots of differences between our work in Africa and the US. A big one is the entrenched systems that we have here in the US. We collect evidence to demonstrate that our current ways of thinking and designing and building are not survivable. Here we're showing how much carbon we're burying underground, typically from car parks. And we like to challenge assumptions. The codes have not always caught up to address humanity's biggest risk, and sometimes more insulation is not cost or carbon effective. In this adaptive reuse project, the upfront emissions of replacing the insulation to meet the code will never get paid back, and this is just how we're demonstrating it. And yeah, I can crunch numbers all day, and it's not really why we're here though. And it's just we're just ultimately trying to get to something that is a better way of living. So I'd love to be more involved in this group and give updates as the research and policy work continues. And yeah, please get in touch if you're interested to hear more. Thanks.
Great, thank you so much, James. It's a great, I've always thought of mass design as being kind of on the real cutting edge, and with a vision of sustainability and the integration of concerns about equity and justice with sustainability. I think that that vision of Mass Design Group has been extraordinarily important and has been far more influential across the industry than you might imagine. So thank you for being here, and I really appreciate your report. Just another reminder, if you're here in the meeting and you have not yet done so, put your name and the organization that you're from in the chat window. And if you're a speaker, if you could place a link to your slides or to your website or to other resources that you referenced during the meeting, and those will be part of the record of this meeting. And then I'm really happy to see we've got Francis Yang on the call. Francis has been one of the small number of really key folks in getting the SE 2050 initiative off the ground, and that's a thriving initiative. Actually, I'm not going to say anything more about it. Francis, would you please tell us about SE 2050 and what's the big news?
Yeah, sure, thanks. And this might need to be quick because I'm actually waiting for a lift to go to the Verge conference down in San Jose. But the biggest news is that we reached 100 signatories. That was
wow.
We made a little bit of a push through just kind of internal network because Greenbuild is next week, and we wanted to. That was our goal for Greenbuild, and then. Yeah, I mean, we have a session at Greenbuild on Thursday if anyone's going to be here. And if you're interested in knowing more about SE 2050, then please come. I think the other big thing to point out is that we're getting data, we're looking at it internally, but there's a real agreement and intention to work with the team at CLF, the benchmarking version 2 study, and really getting more joined up with a larger set of data and an alignment in the findings and analysis we want to do with all this data. So yeah, I think those are the main updates from us. Thank you.
Great, thanks a lot, Francis. And I intend to see you on Wednesday at your presentation at Greenbuild. I will be one of the people in the audiences cheering you on.
Oh, fantastic! Thank you. I'll tell our speakers to look out for you.
Maybe I'll wear a Halloween.
Don't you
recognize me.
No heckling. Thanks.
I promise. So actually, there's somebody on the call who was not on the agenda but has been here for the call, and I would love to get an update from Wes Sullins, if you don't mind. Would you come on and tell us something about what's happening with USGBC and even potentially plans for updating LEED and in order to reflect embodied carbon more fully?
Yeah, thank you. I'm not on camera. I have a cold, so I don't look great. But thanks for inviting me. Yeah, we have our conference next week, the USGBC's Greenbuild Conference in San Francisco. Hope to see many of you there. And we do have a couple of announcements we'll be making about the rating system and some updates. So stay tuned for that. I can't really provide any details, but there'll be a press release next week. So hopefully you'll be there, or you can see that on our website. And we have big plans for the future. We're basically launching the future of LEED, the next version of the rating system. It's going to really kick off in earnest next year. And there's going to be a deep dive into embodied carbon and operational and whole life carbon. So we're looking for experts and advice and stakeholder input. So there'll be lots of opportunities next year. But yeah, we're definitely excited about it. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Just there's lots of good sessions next week on embodied carbon. I'm on a panel on Tuesday looking at the future of sustainable materials.
Yeah.
And that'll be hopefully interesting to talk about really multi-attribute products, not just embodied carbon, but also healthy, circular, low emitting, all those things together. I think we're seeing a convergence of a lot of great practices, and we want to reflect that and lead. So maybe I'll stop there, but thanks for the opportunity.
Great, thanks, Wes. And by the way, just yesterday I was making my own schedule for Greenbuild, and I will be in the audience on Tuesday when you're giving your presentation as well. So
awesome.
I'll be happy to meet you in 3 dimensions, not just as a little box on a screen.
Wonderful.
So with that is the conclusion of our meeting. We're going to end 16 minutes early, and you can thank me for offering you 16 minutes back in your life. And with that 16 minutes, you can do something wonderful and regenerative. Perhaps go outside and dance in the rain or in the sunshine and juggle or hop up and down. In the meantime, thank you all so much for attending today. We're really happy with the growing participation and all of the energy around embodied carbon that we can witness. So thank you for your participation, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye then.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Great work, everyone.